peur de personne.
A cinematic study of the young women who risked it all to join a jihadist movement, flying high in Paris's premier circus ring, and the cartoon cowboy who's a cult icon at almost 80 years old. That's all coming up in today's show. Well, we're starting with a film that explores the phenomenon of the so-called ISIS brides. These women from all over the world, some of them very young, signed up for life in the Islamist caliphate, often with tragic consequences. Rabia follows a French recruit who travels to Syria and is welcomed by a notorious madam there who seems to control her fate. France 24's Sonia Patricelli met with Rabia's director and its lead actresses to find out more.
Qu'est-ce que tu fous? Je t'ai envoyé 40 messages. Oui, bah, je bosserai. Demain, 6h à Orly. Akram m'a envoyé les billets.
These young people came from all over the world, 400,000 of them who decided to leave their homes, lured by these promises. If we keep thinking that it's just other people, and that those others have nothing to do with us, and that we shouldn't bother trying to understand them, then that's the most dangerous way of perpetuating this kind of system.
Welcome, sisters.
Salam alaikum, Jessica.
You will get them when you leave the house.
Installez-vous, ici c'est le coin des Françaises.
Vous l'avez déjà vu?
Madame?
Ouais.
Si Allah il devait avoir une femme, ce serait elle.
Oui, Fatiha Medjati.
Fatia Medjati, or the Black Widow of ISIS, the Madame of ISIS, or Madame Claude of ISIS. She had lots of nicknames. She's a monstrously fascinating character. So for an actress, it's a gift to try and understand her. Even if it sounds trashy to say it like that, because she's a character. For me, she's a psychopath, really. So there are two things that she really believes in. There's her religious fervor, which was real, and you'll always find in a cult movement. And at the same time, she found a good way to make money, like all good pimps do.
Qu'est-ce qui t'arrive, Rabia? Est-ce que tu aurais oublié les règles?
So I think it's a very feminine film. I mean, it's practically all women. And it's also about the power that women have over each other, that we can dominate or submit to each other. It's not just men who do that to women. And this madam, what's incredible about her, when we think of ISIS, we think of men manipulating women. And that's the case. But this woman was respected by an enormous number of men.
By all men, even. She was called Sheikha. That's one of the greatest titles you can give someone. It's the same as king or queen. It was Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi who proclaimed the Islamic State. So he was Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and she had the title of Sheikha.
Tu veux rentrer en France? Ici, c'est un plus grand destin qui t'attend. Tu sais ce qu'est la faux jumelle? Tu crois que tu peux manigancer derrière mon dos sans conséquence?
On s'est trompé. Faut qu'on parte, Jessica.
Well, now to a comic strip cowboy who, despite celebrating his 78th birthday, remains forever young to his fans. Lucky Luke has a new graphic novel out, and he's also the star of an upcoming TV show. We take a look back at this cult character and his enduring appeal.
He's not far off 80, but still has his reflexes. Faster than his own shadow, Lucky Luke, symbol of an ideal America, will again take on his old adversaries, the Daltons, in both a new comic book and a new TV show. Ever the icon, and age has done nothing to dull public recognition of the cowboy in his iconic white Stetson.
Lucky Luke, oui.
Une bande dessinée, cowboy, Far West.
C'était l'homme qui tirait plus que son ombre.
C'est un cowboy, hein?
C'est ça, c'est le cowboy solitaire.
Created in 1946, Lucky Luke was the archetypal fearless hero for post-war children drawn by Belgian artist Maurice.
At that time, a comic book hero needed to be noble, to serve as an example for every quality possible and impossible. And you couldn't mock them like you normally do now.
Not a thing about him has changed, except for switching his cigarette out for a piece of straw in the 80s, a matter of public health.
He rolled his own cigarettes. Some people pretended it was hash.
Interestingly, his clothing matched the black, yellow and red flag. of Morris's Belgian nationality. The artist loved US history and westerns with a good dose of humour. Like with his pistol duels, Lucky Luke has survived everything life has thrown at him, including the death of his creator. For the last 23 years, artist HD has guided the character on his adventures with the same meticulous care.
I didn't want to change the drawing. I didn't want him to evolve to keep the quality of the character. But for the writing, obviously we tell things now as we wouldn't have done 50 years ago.
The comics draw on a deep well of American history, from slavery to segregation, and today, social unrest and more.
The best geopolitical expert on the USA is still Lucky Luke. He talks about things as they are today, because everything happening to us now began when the story takes place, at the end of the 19th century. In the United States, things are still deeply rooted in that time.
That could be one of the reasons that Lucky Luke is one of the few comic book characters to have escaped the printed page for the silver screen. Terence Hill and Jean Dujardin both donned the costume, and they're shortly to be joined by French actor Alban Lenoir in a series currently being shot in Spain. In fact, up until recently, there was only one area the lonesome cowboy hadn't ventured: onto the art market. Morris retained a tight hold on his drawings his whole life, keeping them from public view. Only now have his heirs allowed the sale of 50 original storyboards, shown here a few days before they went at auction.
Coming back to the original lets you take stock of it all. How the titling wasn't printed on the original, it was really all done by hand by the artist.
The work shows a sense for detail, the mark of a master comic book artist, with his notes in the margins.
I think it goes beyond comics. It's really part of our collective culture.
And as ever, striking his familiar silhouette, Lucky Luke rides off into the sunset, ready for tomorrow's adventures.
Well, next we take you to an iconic location here in Paris, the Winter Circus, where a new show is celebrating the flying trapeze. The dazzling art form was actually invented in France, and this performance proves that it's still alive and well. The Flying Tabares troupe brought their breathtaking act over from the United States. Charlie James and our colleagues at France 2 got a preview.
High flying, breathless, and hypnotic. Just a few words used to describe the trapeze artists at the Winter Circus in Paris. They make it look easy, but these routines require extensive training. A few hours before the show starts, these trapezists are practicing. They are the Flying Tabares from the United States. 4 women and 2 men famous for their triple somersault, a challenging move that doesn't always succeed.
So close. The most important thing is to give the right timing so that the flyers can meet him at the perfect time. Because sometimes it can be leaving, sometimes it can be too soon. So trapeze is a bunch of little things all together.
Under the dome of this Parisian circus, 25 meters in the air, lives the spirit of Jules Léotard. In 1859, this Frenchman from Toulouse invented flying trapeze at just 21 years old. It's a story that these young Californians know by heart.
We have a lot of respect for him. Sometimes I think to myself, like, how can somebody come up with such a crazy act? You know, like, we're gonna swing on this side, flip in the air, and somebody over there is gonna catch us. And I just feel grateful that he did, and we are now performing here.
To go back in time and discover Léotard's life, you need to climb a few steps. The circus's former hayloft has been transformed into a private museum.
I'll take you to a secret place. We're behind the scenes at the circus, where we have a lot of treasures.
Among the treasures, this beam from 1852.
This is the beam from inside the circus dome, 25 meters high, where all the trapezes took their equipment. Léotard hooked his trapeze to this beam.
Jules Léotard also passed down his famous costumes, tight-fitting bodysuits that were scandalous in a time of hoop skirts and tuxedos. 165 years later, troupe member Tad Payne-Tobin wears a costume that is slightly more flashy.
Very pink.
And very sparkly, too. What we do, it's very physical, and you can't have loose clothing swinging about, and you would get tangled. It makes things more difficult to do. So it worked very well, and we keep using it over 100 years later.
Ever since the first flying somersault, the art of trapeze has continuously evolved. But thanks to the descendants of Jules Léotard, the legend of the flying trapeze lives on in the Winter Circus.
Finally, to a new production from South African choreographer Robin Orlin, which marks her first encounter with the explosive Garage Dance Ensemble. They're known for their theatrical, politically conscious approach to movement-based storytelling. Together, they ask the question, how in a salt desert is it possible to blossom? The answer is in this extraordinary performance, underpinned by its quest for social justice. We'll leave you with a taste of that one. Otherwise, do join us here next time on Arts 24 for more movies, arts and culture. There's more news coming up just after this.